You're listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call, where Kevin, Wendy, and Brent talk about anything and everything that couldn't quite squeeze into the regular show. Today we talk about iZombie, Community, Continuum, The Originals, Arrow, The Flash, Forever, Once Upon a Time, and Grimm. Hey everybody, welcome back. Let's see what Kevin's got for us.
Yes, a few shows to talk about this week since we had so many good ones. Boy. First off, let's talk about the iZombie episode, episode 9, Patriot Brains. Those of you watching as they air might have already seen another one by the time this last call's out. But this was another good episode and certainly potentially a big game changer. You know, Liv's got the brain of a sniper, that she's working with here, a military person. Which made for some interesting stuff. But the real big thing is the idea that she has decided that Blaine has to die after she's realized what's happening with her new zombie boyfriend and what they're doing. They concoct the big plan to pull this off. She's got the sniper rifle while he has invited Blaine over, but she can't literally pull the trigger, just can't do it, which wasn't a big surprise, but made for some interesting stuff. But actually the fact that really changed things was when the boyfriend decided that he was going to go ahead and tried to kill him with his fork that he was using on the grill or whatever, and didn't succeed. Did it very poorly, and Blaine took him out. So Liv is going to be a mess, and this is going to make for some, the show that was kind of a little just fun popping along is now throwing a really big curveball in from a serious point of view. I mean, add to that Major's situation where he had Blaine's underling out to extract information from him and thought he had killed him with several bullets, but being the zombie got away, has now put him in some very precarious situations, even worse than he was. So things are really pushing to a head, and I really appreciate the way they're doing it. It's staying very interesting, still a little bit of fun, not quite as much this episode. So I'm really just, as the episodes go by, even liking iZombie more and more.
I was definitely more interested in this one again this week. I'm sad, though, if she actually killed her musician zombie boyfriend, because I really liked him. And I thought that it was kind of cool that she was going to work with him to take down Blaine. I thought that was going to be kind of an interesting turn. And now I'm worried. So hopefully a shot to the head, I think in zombie lore that is, a true kill shot, but maybe there's an out in this show. I don't know. I like that. And I haven't really been interested in the Major character. I got a little more interested in him this episode because he's in such a bad place in terms of nobody believing him, and he's starting to look really crazy and out of control. So he's finally getting something interesting to do that I'm liking. Continue to love Ravi. I'm very relieved that it appears zombieism does not cross-pollinate across species. That was a cool little bit as well. That was kind of it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that they didn't drag out the Ravi thing for too much longer, and that he admitted to Liv what had happened, of course, after he'd realized that he wasn't changing into a zombie. And I love how she caught him sniffing the brains. Like, what are you doing? That was funny stuff. I agree that I thought when they were going to take out Blaine that I thought, okay, they might do that. This would be an interesting change, an interesting twist in the dynamic of the show. And then when they didn't, and as soon as she hesitated, I'm like, oh, they're falling into the old, cliches. She can't do it. She's too good of a person. And then, when the boyfriend went to attack, I was like, oh, okay. And then when he got shot, I'm like, that's also kind of cliche. But Blaine has taken out zombies before. I mean, we've seen him take out, there were some underlings that opposed him and that tried to muscle into his business, and he took them out. So he obviously knows how to dispatch them permanently. So I have to think it's probably a permanent kill, unless he was just doing it to disable him or something, and he's going to torture him later or something. I guess we'll find out about that. But yeah, it was an okay episode. The brain of the week wasn't really exciting to me, but the outcome of what happened to Ravi, and as well as Blaine and the new boyfriend, that is pretty interesting.
I did see from an interview with, I think it was the writer of the episode, that that the boyfriend's dead, no question. It's not no coming back from that.
Oh, much sadness. I really liked him. I really liked him on Merlin. He played King Arthur.
Yep. So what the impact on Liv will be, Should be very interesting. Also wanted to talk about the latest Community. This would be episode number 10 of season 6, Basic RV Repair in Palmistry. Only in the sense that I am really digging this season. Comedy, as we all know, hits all of us just a little bit differently. But I got to say, I think this season of Community has been one of its best for me. They have been just consistently funny. Sometimes the slap the knee stuff, that much for me, but just a good chuckle all throughout with a real feel for our characters, even with the newer ones that have come in. I think they really, as a group, are gelling. So this was just another fun, crazy venture with them out on the RV and how they even ended up there and how they all lose it for fear of dying and so forth. All the crazy stuff just fit into the Community world. So for one that was off campus, I thought it worked pretty well. So I've really been enjoying it.
Well, I haven't seen this one yet. I've been a little bit more up and down with Community this season, although I do agree I think the last couple 3 have been stronger.
Yeah, this episode, like I said, it wasn't the greatest. It was okay. I think I talked about this before, and I think I'm sure of it now, that the reason this season of Community feels kind of off to me is because the Community that I've loved the most, the episodes I've loved the most, have been really, really tightly packed and fast-paced, and it just in and out. And the stories and the comedy and the zaniness has been just, bam, bam, bam. But these episodes, since they don't have the same time restrictions, and they don't have to have the cuts that are necessary for network, tend to drag a little bit. And I think that's why I'm not really loving it as much, is because I think the pacing is off for me. The stories are good, and the jokes are good, but there's just, I don't know, it just seems to be a little bit too much lag time, or it's stretched out too much. I can't really put my finger on it. Just, I think that's, the pacing has a lot to do with why I'm a little not as loving this season as much as I should.
Yeah, and, completely understand. Again, comedy and the way it hits everybody just a little bit differently, but we don't often talk about the eps here. I just wanted to kind of mention I've certainly, as a whole, been having a lot of fun. And then the final show I wanted to talk about this week is I've got our Continuum rewatch. Season 3, episode 4. Let's talk about Minute Changes. This one is one that's got quite a bit of the introspection here. We got a lot of stuff happening with our characters that we're really learning more about them. We do have certainly a story here a little bit with the college campus of the security folks going a little over the edge and ending up killing some people. Not to discount that, but it's really a lot more about what's starting to move in the heads of some of our characters here. We had the flash forward bit, which was the Kira story of her in the future, assisting at a fire at a building. And we see the ruthless side of things. She is, trying to save a couple of small girls, and her boss there is telling them, which, doing my air quotes, important people need saving, life credit things and all that. And come to find out, as we see part of that at the beginning and then at the end, she gets in big trouble and is even going to have her life debt increased for not choosing to get the important people and instead saving the children. And it was great. I remember when we talked about this first time around, to see her fellow soldiers as they stand in line talking to the boss, all sticking their hands behind her to congratulate her on doing the right thing, even if it's not what she was told to do. So again, this idea of dealing outside of what you're being told to do, because a good part of this very much here is Carlos, and we're seeing him again go even deeper, not understanding or not believing this Kira, not have the same connection, literally to going to the freezer where the body is to sit down with his alcohol, just talking to her. So he's really gone down that dark road a bit in terms of having real crisis of what to do on these things. So we get to see that there. We get to see Julian being the Theseus type as he's using his ability to use words to try to step in as they get him on one of those TV shows to talk about who's really responsible for the death of those kids on the college campus. And right down to seeing the fact that the police department is willing to cover things up and plant evidence to try to protect one of their own. This whole idea of doing it the wrong way, but trying to protect yourself in terms of how they do it. And this is also where we out Betty as being a bit of the mole, having worked with the girl who died, Rebecca. So it's not a big actiony one. It's not one. It's got the oohs and ahs, but you got some real important setup of what happens here, along with the two Alec stuffs. What's going on in Pyron with our, shall we say, regularly developing Alec, and the fact he's not going to make the same progress he wants and realizes that, right down to when Scar Alec and he meet at the lab near the end and have the conversation we all knew we'd be having, the Marty McFly Star Trek references of what happens with them, but the idea that they're going to really diverge on what their goals are and what's up with Emily. So an enjoyable episode, and certainly in the context of the series, an important one, but it's, again, not one of your ooh and ah, can't miss ones.
I kind of agree. It when I watched it, it didn't feel like it was sort of moving things forward big, but in hindsight it was, because it is Betty getting outed as the mole. It is the two Alecs meeting each other for the first time. I thought there were some great moments when, I always call him Other Alec, is talking to Emily, and when I watched it again, I was like, oh, it's clear they're done now. Also, Carlos was really pivotal in this episode, because during the student riot, he's the one who's telling Kira, look, these kids have a legitimate gripe. Kira's saying, colleges are where revolution is planted. We have to shut it down. And then slowly we see her changing her mind about the cover-up that's going on with the cop. And then when she thinks she's convinced him to step forward and tell the truth, and he shows up and he's like, no, I don't have to tell the truth, so I'm not going to. There was another sort of seed planting moment with Kira about how, the future isn't really all that beautiful and shiny like maybe she was thinking in the past. I also loved the moment when Carlos, it was so sad, he's sitting having a drink and talking to dead Kira. That was a really nice moment. So for me, Carlos was kind of the most interesting character this time around. And then at the very end, when Julian comes to him in the garage and calls him out as a hypocrite, I really liked all that a lot.
Yeah, the Carlos dead Kira stuff was pretty cool. The Betty outing was very important moving forward, and it was really well done. I thought it was very tense. You kind of felt how tense she was. The two Alex meeting, we're waiting for that, and that was awesome to see. And, you commented on the touching himself and saying, thumbing his nose at the geeks, the science geeks and nerds. But what I loved the most, of course, was Emily showing up in Scar Alec's bathroom and saying, I choose you. And I don't think it was a case of the other one rejected her, so she went to him. I think it was a case of she was testing the other one to see if he was like her. And I love her comments about, you've never been there. You haven't been there yet. And you could tell she wasn't really talking so much about herself as she was talking about the other Alec, too. Because he had said that he traveled through time to save her. He had already said that to her. And she confronts the other Alec with the right timeline Alec with, you haven't gotten to that point yet. You haven't gotten to the point where you would do anything for love, for instance. And when he clearly doesn't seem to have any inkling of what the other Alec has, I think that's when she realizes that there's no hope there and moves on. So I thought that was really great.
And that'll do it for me.
Excellent. Wendy, what do you have for us?
First, we've got listener voicemail from Christine in Michigan talking about a recent Tuner Minute I did about characters being happy and then ending up dead.
I am getting pretty sick of a moment of happiness meaning death for a character. Most recently for me, spoilers for the originals, the homosexual couple of the vampire and werewolf, they had finally decided that they were going to leave town together and declared their love for each other. And immediately I screamed at the TV, oh, one of you is so dead. And that's exactly how the episode ended. He was killed as a pawn to try and start a war between the vampires and werewolves. And it's just getting annoying. I mean, it's not dramatic anymore. It's predictable and standard. I mean, at this point, if they want to shock us with something, we can have happiness happen to somebody, and that's it. Nothing bad happens to them. And it would totally throw us off guard. We wouldn't know what to expect anymore. I mean, they've really got to change their ways. Drama does not mean deaths every other episode.
Hey, Christine, thanks. I tend to agree. I think that somewhere along the line, writers have got this notion that they're not a serious drama unless they kill a lot of people. And the world isn't dangerous if people aren't dead pretty much every other week. So I agree. I don't like things that are predictable. And I think this is an area where writers are falling on a weak, lazy writing technique.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me when you said that happened on the originals. I mean, the same people behind the creative people are behind the Vampire Diaries, and they do the same sort of thing. You know, two people get together, something bad's got to happen. It's, you know, thinking of the finale, the next to last episode and the last episode of Vampire Diaries. So, yeah, but hopefully that isn't true of Arrow. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is entertaining all of us longtime fans, just like Christine. When we see that, boy, our minds go to the same spot.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about Arrow, the season finale. And who would have predicted that we end up with Oliver Queen naming himself Oliver Queen again, leaving Starling City with Felicity, riding off into the sunset, possibly to Coast City? Would not have guessed that's where we were going. Would have guessed that we were going to kill Ra's al Ghul, which Oliver does succeed in doing this time around. We start off with the crazy honeymoon that includes a stopover for poisoning a whole city. I was very surprised how quickly Oliver outs himself as the one who sabotaged the plane, and then they start fighting with Ra's. Poor planning on their part that there's only one chute in that plane, though. But he and Nyssa managed to still land, although they've lost the bioweapon and they've lost Ra's. He's not dead. Hook up with everybody back at Palmer Labs after the Flash shows up and can save everyone from Nanda Parbat. And I've got to wonder, is there a land bridge to Nanda Parbat? How did he run all the way there? But he doesn't have time to stay and help with the bioweapon. Just kind of scratching my head at that a little bit. Malcolm Merlyn steps up to fill the leadership void and hands out assignments, and everybody starts going in search of Ra's. They're all pissed at Oliver when he arrives. And even more so, Diggle and Felicity when they learn that he had no intention of surviving his plane crash in order to save the city. But, you know, he was basically going to die without ever explaining what he had done. And I assume he would have explained, maybe to Malcolm Merlyn would have been the one to deliver the message. We had a lot of Malcolm Merlyn delivering the message of explaining what was going on with the plans. That was one problem I had with this episode, actually. But I did like how once they decided they were going to find Ra's and find him through his nemesis, Damien Dark, got everybody circling the wagons. There was some fun stuff as they were swarming onto the hotel where he was staying. I was totally fooled when Oliver walks into the hotel room and the guy that's there is the actor Christopher Heyerdahl, because he plays really good bad guy. So I was like, oh, he's Damien Dark. This is going to be awesome. And instead, he's just the red shirt. So now I've got very high expectations for whoever they have cast as Damien Dark. So you're on notice, because he would have been an awesome bad guy. They finally do catch up with Ra's. Somehow the police are deciding that they're going to take out both of them, and I don't remember who gave the order. Lance doesn't know anything about it. Lance isn't even convinced that there's a bioweapon by Laurel. He gets a call from Felicity to confirm it, and then he believes it. And he gives her a heads up that they're going to kill whoever is on the dam that's left standing. The fight itself, I was not really impressed with, partially because you had two stuntmen in the same costume, and it was a sword fight. So I don't know about you guys, but usually Arrow really pulls out the stops with the action, and I didn't really care about this fight, how Oliver all of a sudden was able to get the upper hand on him, kind of, I don't know, it didn't surprise me in a cool way. And even the fight in the plane wasn't that interesting to me. But then he gets shot, and of course, Chekhov's dam falls over the dam, and somebody flies up and saves him. We originally are, of course, thinking it's Ray because he's the only one we've ever seen in the Atom suit. But Felicity had a class course in flying the Atom suit and saves Oliver. There was a very nice sort of closing speech when Oliver gets together with the gang to talk about teamwork. And then he tells Felicity, I'm done and I'm leaving and you need to come with me. They're leaving town. Diggle is still not too happy. And that was probably the thing I liked the most in this episode was the couple moments that he and Oliver shared, because that really was about trust and how Oliver did everything this season. And, whether or not that's a relationship that can be repaired or not. Loved Thea showing up and having Diggle's back and naming herself Red Arrow and then having Oliver name her Speedy. So I'm looking forward to seeing her in the mix next season a lot. We also learned that part of this whole deal with Malcolm Merlyn was, assuming everything worked, he would become Ra's al Ghul, which he does, and he's going to have an uneasy alliance with Nyssa out of that, and also with Oliver, because Oliver tells him, I'll never forget or forgive what you did to Thea and Sarah. And that was my criticism of this episode. It's also what inspired the Tuner Minute, because everything about that deal with Merlyn, to me, there was not enough breadcrumbs presented for it. And because it was such a tough thing to swallow, the idea that the person who drugged your sister, killed your former lover, did all these things, that he would be willing to, put all that aside for this larger threat of what Ra's al Ghul is going to do to the city, because of everything that Malcolm set up for Oliver. To me, that needed to be shown. And I actually think that would have been a really powerful way for us to know what Oliver's going through. The rest of the characters don't. Because instead we got, nothing. We got sort of these platitudes infrequently by Oliver. And I think that was a missed opportunity this season. I do criticize Arrow this season for, the pacing being, galloping sometimes where it needed to walk. And this was an example where I liked where we ended, but I'm not really thrilled with sort of how we got there.
I totally see your point, and I think, as we talked about, this is one of those as well for me where I'm willing to forgive because I like the ending and it makes sense, because we didn't want Oliver wasn't going to be Ra's al Ghul, so having Merlyn be it makes sense. He was in the League of Assassins. He concocted this plan with Oliver, so I'm cool with that. It works for me. It's fine. He can live his life. He can make some guest appearances from time to time. He'll always be Thea's dad, sort of thing. So we've got that going for us. I loved seeing Thea show up in the red suit. That was pretty cool. You're right. The little discussion about, I want to call myself Red Arrow. So they got a reference to all of the different names of the Green Arrow assistants in here. We've had Arsenal now. She wants to be Red Arrow, and no, you're Speedy. So that's pretty cool. I like Oliver telling Diggle in that one of those, you talked about those times they were together, one of them at the end where he's saying, you have a life, a family, you need to protect them. You need to get a mask. You need to get some kind of costume if you're going to go out there and keep doing this stuff. So I like that line. I like the loophole for giving, for Merlyn explaining to, I believe, Nyssa about how he could become Ra's al Ghul, because he's still in the prophecy, because he was, tortured by Raz's blades and he survived. So a little bit of a loophole. It does end with Ray testing his shrinking technology. I told you guys early on that the Atom is supposed to be a lot like Ant-Man in the Marvel Universe. He has the ability to shrink himself down and so forth. And Ray was working on that, and the entire floor of his building explodes. So going to be interesting to see what happens there. And it also, now that Merlyn is Ra's al Ghul, you have to wonder, and what we saw in the trailer for Legends of Tomorrow, how is he going to play a part in the Sarah Lance resurrection? Is it something he's going to do because he regrets what he did? Is it something Nissa's going to do because she wants her lover back? I mean, what's going to happen there? That's going to be very interesting to see as well. The last thing I'm going to comment on is I love the way it ended, of course. Big Felicity Oliver shipper. Love the fact that they were together and driving off, like you said, to Coast City probably or somewhere. But I love Felicity's line. Oliver says, where do you want to go? And she says something like, well, hopefully a state that will annul an Nanda Parbat marriage. I thought that was a great line.
Yeah, you folks have covered it very well. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit on our Arrow Squad podcast, that with the Flash really cranking up and being really solid near the end of this season, and with all the stuff going on with the spinoff, The Legends of Tomorrow, it's looking a little bit on the Arrow side like some of the attention to detail on the production thing and like some of those fights that you mentioned, Wendy, weren't at the usual high Arrow level. Not that they were bad, but they weren't the ooh, ah kind of things like we often get. I thought the fight on the plane was decent, but the big showdown with Roz was a bit of a letdown. How we actually got the upper hand is much like how Roz killed him, or appeared to kill him at that time in Nanda Parbat. The move was the same kind of deal, but that isn't even that big a deal. It just wasn't quite as oomph as some of the other stuff was. Now, it did have a couple things that made up for it, and this is more for me as a fan from the emotional side. When Oliver stood up on the plane and told him, "My name is Oliver Queen," that was pretty cool. Little hairs in the back of my neck. I mean, I loved that. He was saying it because he figured nothing to lose. This plane's going down. So I kind of get why I did it, but that was very cool. And then the way that he got saved falling after getting shot over the railing and all, because Ray still had to work on the way to stop the virus. He couldn't be in the suit, so he didn't think there was any way to be there. I'm sorry. It's just, I love Felicity too much. It was too cool that it was her in the suit. That was definitely a woohoo and fist pump in the air. So they still hit the emotional sides. And it's interesting because the very ending is very much like what you'd want to see in a series ender. So the fact that they're willing to show it here, and as we know, characters, much like from your Tuna Minutes before, that are totally happy. We know there's no way that's staying. So, season 4 is going to have some interesting stuff. And if you didn't check out those links we mentioned in the regular show this week, the 2-minute bits from the red carpet from Stephen and Emily, definitely listen to them in light of this episode, because they do talk a little bit about some of the breadcrumbs that were dropped and where it might go. So it was still really, really good, but you're right in that it's just not quite where it's been, and I think it's a little that adage that the showrunners are now trying to do 3 shows at the same time.
The hell you say, Kevin, about Felicity and Oliver.
Hey, man, I'm right there with you, but we know what happens. We know they're going to get a half a mile down the street and they're going to get a phone call or something. So, I don't know. I will emotionally think they've had the entire summer to kick back, but we'll have to wait to see what it is.
Well, generally, they do follow the same amount of time as the hiatus. So I'm kind of expecting that'll happen too. So it's going to be like 3 months down the road, and then we're going to have some shoes drop. They planted this whole Damien Dark, Roz's nemesis. They've dropped that anvil a number of times, so I'm assuming he's going to be coming back into the mix. The Legends of Tomorrow trailer, it made me think that, Roy, either he shrunk at the time it blew up, or blowing up was what was the catalyst to make him shrink, or whatever. So I was a little bit disappointed in seeing that trailer, because I was like, oh, I think they just answered the question that we should have had as a cliffhanger about what happened to him. We also know that if he's supposedly dead, Felicity's the VP of the company, so she might get called back because she needs to go run Palmer Industries pretty quick.
Not anymore. He was looking at the screen that said employee terminated or whatever.
Oh, was he? I didn't know what that was. Okay. But I like your theory, Brent, that maybe Merlin and Nyssa come to some detente by Lazarus pitting Sarah. Although there's some logistics there, right? They have to go back to Starling City and dig her up and bring her back. Unless Merlin's had her on ice for a while.
I hope so.
Which could be, considering all these other evil plans Merlin had that have all occurred off screen, which was what I was complaining about earlier. But I think they set up some good stuff. I do agree, Kevin. I think that the showrunners did not have the same attention to detail on Arrow in this season because of kicking off The Flash and also getting the Legends of Tomorrow spinoff going. So I hope that they, tighten up the ship a little bit more next season.
I disagree with you guys. I loved Arrow this season. I mean, I didn't see it as being sloppy or loose or not as good as the last seasons or anything like that. I loved it.
Oh, I loved it a great deal. It was great to go inside to the emotions of a lot of the characters, and I think it was still excellent. But I do think, even going back to the episode a few back when Roy was there with Oliver in the fight with Ray as Adam, and basically got electrocuted and left, and they didn't even do anything with him. He was just left there, story bit wise, and the producers had to apologize for what ended up as a cutting room floor scene of even anybody helping to pull a guy off the ground. I just think it's not production wise, just a couple of spots were a little bumpier than they have been in the past. It's been impeccable in the past to me, and this year, while still very, very good, a couple spots were a little exposed, I thought.
Yeah, to me in this finale, in hindsight, I didn't need to see them land the crashing plane. If they were going to hand-wave something, hand-wave that. How did they get out of the crashing plane and land versus some of the other stuff? Like, it would have been nice to have any moment where he and Nyssa talk about they agreed that this plan's over and they're going to go their separate ways now, or how are they going to deal with the fact that they're married? And like I said, the whole thing with him and Merlin having this deal that we've never seen on screen, Oliver's journey would have been so much more interesting to me if we had known what he was struggling with the whole time. I think that was a huge miss. The other show I wanted to talk about was The Flash, because I liked how this episode we were seeing everyone working together. I really liked the Captain Cold and his sister messing with Cisco a lot. I liked that there was a very direct comparison between The Flash by Joe versus the Arrow, and very clearly saying, look, you're not as dark as this guy. You can't make deals with bad people. That's not your way. Really like that. I actually felt sad for Eddie when he decides that, he's believing the future that Wells told him about, and he gives up Iris. I thought it was unfair the way he did it, but it was a great sort of story moment. And I really liked when Wells has to fight all three of them, plus they're using the nanites from Ray Palmer to take him down. He's not dead, right? I mean, that was my assumption, was he was just captured going into whatever's coming next. But I really have to give the show props. They keep moving things forward, and lots of good character stuff going on this episode.
Yeah, I think he's just captured. That was really cool that they were able to use the nanotechnology, because I wondered what Oliver would be able to do there, and that made perfect sense. The whole Captain Cold and his sister arc, that bugged me, and that's probably why I didn't give it a really good rating. I mean, I give it a high and watch it soon, but why I didn't go in the watch it now territory, because from a story point of view, it didn't make any sense that they even had to involve them, because I was thinking back to a few episodes ago when Cisco, under duress, outside of his laboratory, made brand new cold gun and a brand new gold gun for the brother and sister in a matter of a couple of hours. Yet we're told somehow that they need Captain Cold and his sister and their weapons in order to subdue these guys. Why? Why can't you just make new weapons and give them to other people, give them to cops?
I can't argue with that.
No, I can't.
I didn't give it that much thought. It was just nice to see the characters back, and the actors are good what they're doing there. So Flash is a series that I like but don't love, but it's been very strong finishing out the season, so I very much have enjoyed it, and this was another example of getting a chance to see it. So we're building up really good to the finale, so I'm going to be very curious to see what issues befall Barry and our gang come that point in time. So I'm glad we also have a little closure with Eddie and Iris, too. I mean, that's, while I felt bad for the guy, I think it's important to see that separate as we try to move forward.
And that's it for me.
All right, I've got a few things to talk about. First of all, I wanted to link you guys to, in case you haven't seen it on our feed so far, the rest of the results of the top 50 genre characters of all time. I'm a little embarrassed to say that this countdown, the poll that we asked you guys to participate in, was a few years ago, and we had a delay in releasing of the audio countdowns. And so the last 5 episodes never got released. And I finally looked at them again and said, you know what? Got to get it out. So I went ahead and released it in text form in the blog. Thanks a lot to Todd Williard, who wrote most of the blurbs that you see underneath each of the characters, describing what they are and who, in case you aren't familiar with them. And I'm interested to hear what everybody's opinion is of it. It looks like, unsurprisingly, the number 1 character was the Doctor from Doctor Who. That shouldn't surprise anybody, but I think the top 10 everybody would kind of go, yeah, I can see that. I'm just curious about the rest of them and where everybody thought they should have fallen, if they fell in the right general area or not.
Yeah, it was awesome to see the list of where things fell at the top. No need to apologize, Brent. You put an insane amount of time into those when we did them before, and we've got so many other shows we're putting out now, and you invest hours and hours into that. So the fact that we kind of had to finally say, hey, we're going to at least put the results out was excellent of you, and also Todd's help. We really appreciate it. It's great to have him involved, as part of our listener community and the stuff he's helped out with. So it was nice to see it there.
Yeah, no, this was a very nice surprise to get, because I didn't know that Brent was working on this. And folks probably do not realize how much time Brent spends editing stuff for us. And he's been extra overloaded with bonus podcasts lately, some of which you've heard and some of which you haven't heard yet. So this was awesome. It was also great to look at this list because there was some, shows that have been gone for a while, like Fringe and some other ones that were popping up in this list. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of good characters and good shows out there. And a lot of them that I expected to see, Firefly and Star Trek and Quantum Leap and stuff. But lots of good stuff in here. Definitely thanks to Brent for pulling this all together.
It'd be funny if I get some comments from people saying, like, where's Ichabod Crane? Well, that show came out after I did this, so.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a time capsule already.
Yes.
Where's Felicity Smoke? After I did this poll, so there you go. All right, I also got some voicemail, again, from Christine in Michigan. She was talking about the Forever season finale as well, our series, as we've turned out, and it's a bit spoilery, so we decided to play it here.
I think the theory for the weapon that first killed you is the weapon that can actually kill you. I think that really hasn't been disproven, because he may have been shot with the gun that killed him, but that wasn't the bullet that killed him. So I think it's possible that the theory still holds, and there was still a possibility that it wouldn't work with that knife, because if he was Julius Caesar, as they were implying, there was quite a few knives that killed him, and there was no way to know if that was the one that killed him. And I think that theory could have gone on for a long time until maybe they found another immortal.
Hey, thanks, Christine. That is a really good point about the fact that it was actually the bullet that killed him, not the gun. And also, you're right. Thank you for mentioning the Julius Caesar thing. I wanted to mention that last week when we talked about the finale, but it slipped my mind that we had originally, at least I had originally speculated that he might have had something to do with the crucifixion of Christ or something, since he was about 2,000 years old. But they kind of strongly hinted at the fact that he was Julius Caesar. So yeah, it would be interesting to see where this show went. Unfortunately, we're not going to get any more episodes.
Cool.
I didn't think he was Julius Caesar. I thought he was a Roman centurion, but I'm not surprised I don't remember that clarity. But that's an interesting theory. I also do like your idea that we need the bullet and not just the weapon. Although, where would we find that thing at this point? So that is kind of an interesting loophole to be able to sustain that theory without having to prove it conclusively.
Yeah, that bullet will be at the bottom of the ocean and completely unrecoverable. So much for that.
Yeah.
All right, I did have a couple links, both Flash related. One is a link to a deleted scene from one of the recent Flash episodes. It kind of explains how the prisoners are fed, because you've got a couple of our characters walking along with a cart full of food and talking about the different dietary demands of the different prisoners and how they get fed. So that's pretty cool. The other one is a link to the Flash Season 1 Sizzle reel that I imagine was played during the upfronts. And it's a cool little summary of what happened in Season 1 of The Flash.
Yeah, these were nice videos. The Sizzle reel was really kind of cool to kind of see it all crystallized together. The food one, I know more people have talked about it than I have, but it was nice to know that they actually filmed something to tie that in.
Yeah, that one was nice to see that they were thinking about that level of detail. The Sizzle reel was a nice sort of a reminder of everything that was very good about season 1.
Definitely. I did want to also touch briefly on the season finale of Once Upon a Time, just to say that I'm really excited for how it ended, because I know you guys aren't, one of you is watching behind and the other one's given up, but they came to a situation where the dark one, the power that is the dark one that was in Rumpelstiltskin, leaves Rumpelstiltskin. It's forced to leave Rumpelstiltskin because he's dying, and the apprentice, the sorcerer's apprentice, aids in getting it out, and then it tries to take over the sorcerer's apprentice, and then Emma uses her magic to scare it away, basically, and then it goes hunting for another victim, and it wants to take Regina. And as it's circling Regina, Emma realizes that Regina needs to have a happy ending. She can't become the Dark One, and so Emma steps in and takes the dark force inside her and becomes the Dark One. And the blade that used to have Rumpelstiltskin's name on it falls down. It had been emptied of a name, and then it says Emma Swan. Very good ending in that front. We also determine or get hints at Lily, who is Maleficent's daughter, and figuring out who her father is, and we're getting strong indications her father was in the dragon. The sorcerer's apprentice says that they need to find the sorcerer, and the sorcerer's name is Merlin, and we all know that Merlin is associated with dragons, so I'm thinking that Merlin is actually Lily's father. So we get some really cool stuff getting set up for next season. I'm really excited.
Oh, very glad to hear it's moving in that direction. I would have liked to have kept up, but just ran out of time, and this one had to fall off the table as far as viewing it regularly.
I've been really enjoying Once Upon a Time this season, and I fell behind, and I knew that I wasn't giving it enough time when I was watching it, so that's why I decided to let them sort of pile up and mainline through. So that's what I'm planning to do, and I'm really excited if they are going to bring Merlin into the mix.
That's pretty cool. The last thing I want to talk about was the episode of Grimm, which was the highlight of the week for me. I'm really excited about this episode and where it went, and oh my god, it was so fast-paced. It picked up right from where it left off last week, with Nick reacting to his mother's death again. There's a quick escape from the attacking Royal Vesson henchmen. They need to, it just so happened so quickly. They need to set up, somehow get information about where the Royals are being, are where they are, figure out some way to get a hold of them so they can, find out who killed his mother, get revenge, get the baby back, get Diana back, deal with Juliet. So they, do this elaborate thing where they set up using the head that Trouble had cut off of one of the henchmen and setting it in the hotel room, and Adeline setting it in and then screaming as if she found it, and having the police come and pretend they don't know who she is, and find out all the information they need to kidnap the royal that actually apparently killed Nick's mother. And there's this great showdown between him and Nick finally gets the upper hand and kills him. And I really wanted, at that point, I was so excited. I wanted to see Zombie Nick come back, but we still haven't seen Zombie Nick. I mean, he kind of made an appearance earlier in the season, I think, and then never again. So I don't really know what's going on with that one. But the king is in Portland. He's come to rescue his Princess Diana, his granddaughter. And it's interesting that Diana still seems to have an affection for Juliet for some reason. I'm still curious at this point why Juliet seemed to have an affection for Diana, because Diana is Adeline's daughter, and she hates everything Adeline. She wants to destroy Adeline, but she doesn't want to destroy her daughter, so that's interesting. The king is taking Diana away in the helicopter, but then the king is killed. He's thrown out of the helicopter, and it turns out it's that resistance fighter that helped Adeline and helped her give birth to Diana and helped protect the two of them. And Diana seems to remember him because he smiles at her, and she gives him a big smile back, and it's pretty cool. And Nick realizes, unfortunately, that it's Juliet who must have lured his mother there, because he puts two and two together with her being in the bed and the computer having fingerprint smudges on it, and realizing that she was the only other one that had access to the email system, and the only other one that his mother would trust to come. So that was hitting him pretty hard. And Juliet did not apparently go with the king, so we have this big confrontation at the end, where she confronts Nick, and it's very interesting because at first he just wants to strangle her to death. He just throws her against the wall, and he's just wringing her neck, and she does not resist, and she even says, "Do it, kill me, do it." She almost seems to want to die at that point, but then when he can't do it, when he gives up and he just can't kill her because I guess he just remembers too much of who she was. She realizes, well, I guess I'll have to kill you. And she goes ahead and tries to kill Nick. And at the end, she says, goodbye, Nick. And then we get this great scene where Trouble from behind says, goodbye, Juliet. And Juliet turns around and Trouble shoots her one through the heart, apparently, with a crossbow. And she appears to die in Nick's arms, blood oozing from her mouth and everything. So, but we get this great final scene that I did not expect. I kind of thought it would end there, but we get the FBI agent Chavez, who's driving up with several men and charging into the house and saying, get her. And I want to know, who is her? Trouble? Juliet? Do they think Diana's in there? And who are they working for? Are they really working for the government, or are they working for the Resistance, or the Royals, or the Grimm Council, or the Vesson Council? Because if I'm not mistaken, this FBI agent is Vesson, I think, from previous experience, but I'm not exactly sure. But that is a pretty dramatic ending. Juliet apparently dead in Nick's arms, and the Vesson-related FBI charging into the house. So, I wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that, and we had a little setup for that very ending a little earlier when Trouble was in the car and got the phone call from her. And the two of them had spoken before Trouble left before. So they tied that pretty good in terms of exactly what it all means and who's working for who. That's what we're going to have to wait to get a little more on. But kudos to him for, dropping that breadcrumb earlier and then catching it here. I mean, the episode itself, just freight train, move, like several of the other finales we've talked about this week. Just great time to be a genre TV fan. I mean, so many of these shows are doing a great job there. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. Had me literally leaning forward to see what was going to happen next. I was very surprised that they killed Juliet, or as you say, appeared to. And based on that interview we talked about in our regular show this week, the showrunners confirmed, if you can believe them, that yes, she's dead. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm still processing that. I appreciate, we've talked about this before, I appreciate that they had the guts to do that and it fit the story. But I really miss it. And maybe that's the point of why they did it, in the sense that the whole Nick Juliet, they had so many stumbling blocks as a couple. I don't know. I'm not sure if I like the idea, or that if her character's truly dead. I mean, talk about a double whammy between his mother and his wife, and what that's going to mean going forward. So Grimm isn't a show that I get like emotionally attached to characters like maybe an Arrow or some of our other shows. So I'm enjoying it just for what it is, and curious, but I'm not sure I like what they did, but I'm glad they did it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we had talked last week about whether or not Juliet is redeemable after being, involved in arranging for Kelly's death. So I guess the answer is she's not. Nick tells everyone, if we run into Juliet, kill her. That's what Trouble did. And I love that. She had no hesitation whatsoever. There was the fight between the two of them leading up to that. I was thinking he was going to kill her. And then I was thinking, they're both going to relent and we're going to have a moment where we see the real Juliet again or something. And then it looked like she was going to kill Nick. So I thought it was really well done, that whole culmination. I also was glad that Nick got to kill the British royal, and they framed him for the murders that Renard did while he was possessed. And I was thinking about, how do we bring Juliet back? And actually, they could do what they did to Renard. Renard's mother brought him back from the dead. Of course, he had this Jack the Ripper hitchhiker who came across, so they'll need to make sure that nobody comes back when they bring her back. But that's one possible way they could undo her being dead. The other thing I loved was Meisner, because I totally shipped Meisner and Adeline when they were running around in the Bavarian Alps. I loved that the little girl seemed to have been, planning this somehow, or I really curious how they're going to play this whole thing out, because I was thrilled to see that guy back. I really liked that character, and hopefully we're going to get some resolution with him hooking up with Adeline somehow to reunite her with Diana or something. Maybe she'll take Diana and she'll give the other kid to Nick. I don't understand how that plays out. I don't see it being realistic to ship Adeline and Nick, so that could be one way where they both get a kid, possibly. So they've set up some interesting stuff for next season. It could go extremely dark based on the fallout of what's happened.
Yeah, part of me wants Juliet to stay dead, but part of me doesn't. I'm with you, Kevin. I don't really know how I feel about that. Like you said, I love that they went there with it, and I'm still kind of reacting to it. If Juliet stays dead, and if this other guy comes back into Adeline's life, I could see, Wendy, that she would go off with both children, and that would probably be fine with Nick's blessing, to as long as he knows they're safe and they're not going to, turn them into evil villains or something. Because this resistance guy seems to be a good guy, and I think Adeline has redeemed a lot of what she's done, because she's helped so much with these people. Now, a lot of it was because of fear of her own life, but she's done a lot of work in that regard. And how long will she be a Hexenbeast because she's lost her powers? So he might just let her go off with both children, and that might be fine. Or they might hang around. I don't know. I just can't see future seasons of Grimm with a little supernatural Diana growing up in the household. It just this isn't Family Ties, so I don't think that would work. But is Juliet going to come back or not? I mean, if I recall correctly, in the first season, or I don't know if it was the first season or beginning of second or whatever, when he took away Adeline's powers, there was some thought that it was really hard to kill Hexenbeasts, and she's a super Hexenbeast, and so how can one bolt through the heart kill her? I have a feeling she might not really be dead.
I don't know how I'll feel about that if she's not dead.
Exactly. Yeah, you make a good point, but if they I don't know. Again, I have to tip my hat and give them a lot of credit for going bold, but you're not getting me into it by doing that.
If they undo it all, then I'm going to be kind of mad. Or there has to be some big twist to how they could bring her back. I really hope we get Trouble more next season too. If he is alone, because that's almost like his family then.
Yeah, I might be okay with bringing Juliet back, but they better not make her good again and make her not a Hexenbeast and make her, everything's hunky-dory again. I mean, I could see them doing a kind of a Ward thing on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., have her be a big bad who survived that and just continues to be a big bad. But we'll see. All right, well, I think that pretty much wraps us up for this last call, folks. Appreciate you listening every week, and Kevin and Wendy for being here, and I'll catch you next time.
Take care, gang.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
We offer several ways for you to get in touch with us. If you come to our website at tuningintoscifitv.com, you can leave a comment on any of our blog posts. There's also a link there over to our discussion forums. You can send us email at feedback@tuningintoscifitv.com. You can leave us voicemail by dialing 206-202-4182, or also on Skype at tuningintoscifitv. You can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/tuningintosci-fi, or visit our Facebook fan page by following the link on our website.
Tuning into Sci-Fi TV was hosted by Kevin Batchelder, Wendy Hembrock, and Brent Barrett. The theme music for Tuning into Sci-Fi TV is by Beatnik Turtle. Used with permission. Listen to Tuning into Sci-Fi TV on Stitcher Radio on Demand. Download the free app today at Stitcher.com. You've been listening to the Tuning